I sat by the window, gazing at the bluebonnets blooming in the garden, reflecting on my 10 years with Mike. Our house in the suburbs of Austin, Texas, had a quiet and peaceful atmosphere. But lately, even this tranquil space felt somewhat suffocating. Looking back, my meeting with Mike seemed like fate. It all started when my friend Jessica introduced us just before graduation from the University of Texas at Austin, saying, "You two will definitely get along." Initially, I met him with a casual attitude, but I was immediately captivated by Mike's gentle smile and intellectual way of speaking. "Sarah, will you go out with me?" Mike proposed the day after our graduation ceremony. I still vividly remember the words he spoke with a nervous expression, backlit by the sunset on the Capitol View lawn. At the time, Mike had just started working as an engineer at Dell Technologies. He was well regarded as a promising young employee. My parents also approved of Mike, with his stable profession. My father, in particular, gave his stamp of approval, saying, "He's a fine young man who values traditional Texan values." After 2 years of dating, we held our wedding ceremony at Villa Antica, a popular wedding venue in Austin. The happiness I felt that day still lingers deep in my heart. Mike in his tuxedo, me in my pure white dress, and the many family members and friends who attended. Everything was perfect, like a dream. The early days of our marriage were truly happy. On holidays, we would drive out to Lake Travis, famous for its zip lines, or enjoy music at the live houses on 6th Street. Mike took an interest in my hobbies too, attending cooking classes together and even starting gardening. But after our daughter Emma was born, subtle changes began to appear. At first, it was minor things. Mike's return home got a little later, and he had more weekend work. At the time, I tried to understand, thinking of him as a hard-working husband. "Sorry, Sarah. I'll be late again today." Every time I saw such a message from Mike, a sense of loneliness welled up inside me. But all I could manage was to reply with a smile, "Do your best." I became a full-time housewife, struggling with childcare. Taking care of Emma while managing household chores. Amidst all this, I started participating in a local moms group. The time spent sharing concerns with friends in similar situations became a precious outlet for me. "Sarah, your husband seems so kind." Every time Linda, a friend from the group, said this, I felt conflicted. Yes, Mike was kind. But lately, it felt like that kindness was gradually fading. Outside the window, Emma was playing in the garden. Seeing her innocent smile warmed my heart. But at the same time, anxiety about whether this was okay also welled up. My relationship with Mike, our future life. I stood up with a deep sigh. "Emma, it's snack time." In my voice calling my daughter, I noticed a slightly harsh tone that I hadn't realized was there. From Emma's 7th birthday, our lives began to change dramatically. There had been gradual changes before, but from this point on, things really started to visibly differ. Mike coming home late had become an everyday occurrence. But now, the word "business trip" was frequently heard. At first, I thought his work had just gotten busier. Dell Technologies is a big company, and maybe Mike's abilities were recognized, and he was given more responsible work. That's what I kept telling myself. Sarah, I've got another business trip. I won't be back until Friday. Every time Mike told me this, a small anxiety grew in my chest. I tried to ask, looking into his eyes. Are you okay? Did something happen? But Mike's answer was always the same. A big project has started. Don't worry. Emma also began to react sensitively to these changes in her father. One night, I was awakened by her scream. Mama! I'm scared. I rushed into Emma's room. She was trembling under her blanket. What's wrong, Emma? I had a dream. Papa was with a scary person. At Emma's words, my heart started racing. I hugged her tightly, suppressing my anxious feelings. It's okay, Mama's here. As such days continued, one night, I was startled by the sound of the front door being roughly opened. I was shocked to see Mike returning home reeking of alcohol. Mike, what's wrong? At this hour? Interrupting my words, Mike shouted. Shut up. It's my business. Then he suddenly started punching the wall. Seeing Emma, who had jumped up startled by the noise, I made a decision. I couldn't let my daughter be scared anymore. A few days later, unexplained rashes appeared on Emma's body. We had her examined at the local family clinic, but they couldn't determine a clear cause. To be safe, it might be better to have her checked more thoroughly at Dell Children's Hospital. Told this by the doctor, we headed to the renowned hospital in Austin. In the hospital waiting room, while hugging Emma, I called Mike. But again, it went to voicemail. I let out a sigh. Mama, isn't Papa coming? I didn't know how to answer Emma's question. Just then, Nurse Jane approached us. Mrs. Johnson, I'd like to speak with you. Please come this way to this private room. At those words, my heart started racing. Is Emma's condition serious? Dr. Brown, the attending physician, would like to speak with you. Entering the private room, a male doctor in his 50s was waiting with a serious expression. Mrs. Johnson, I have a question. Have there been any changes in your home recently? At that question, I was at a loss for words. Well, nothing in particular. Dr. Brown continued with an even more serious expression. Actually, Emma's symptoms might be caused by severe stress. This is my suggestion, but please consider divorce immediately. At those words, I was stunned. Huh? Divorce? What do you mean? In a private interview with Emma, I heard some concerning things. It seems your husband's behavior is causing Emma significant stress. At that moment, all the anxieties and doubts I had been feeling came rushing in. Mike's changes, Emma's nightmares, and now this doctor's words. It all started to connect. Tears began to flow from my eyes without me realizing it. Dr. Brown's words continued to echo in my ears. The word divorce sank into my chest like heavy lead. However, thinking of my daughter Emma, I couldn't turn a blind eye to this reality. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. "Doctor," I asked, suppressing my trembling voice. "Can you tell me specifically what Emma said?" Dr. Brown looked at me with gentle yet stern eyes and slowly began to speak. "Emma says she witnessed her father bringing an unknown woman into the house." At those words, I felt as if my heart had stopped for a moment. Mike, my husband. The unbelievable reality was slowly taking shape. Dr. Brown continued. "She also mentioned hearing violent language and behavior towards you. These events are causing Emma significant psychological stress." I was at a loss for words. Mike's infidelity and violence towards me. To think that our daughter had witnessed these things. Without realizing it, tears were flowing uncontrollably down my cheeks. "Mrs. Johnson," Dr. Brown's voice seemed to come from far away. "Emma's rash is likely psychosomatic urticaria. If this environment continues, it could develop into more serious physical and mental issues." At those words, I came back to my senses. Emma. Yes, I had to think of my daughter first. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "I understand," I said, putting strength into my voice. "For Emma's sake, I'll seriously consider what to do next." "Thank you." Leaving the examination room, Emma was looking at me anxiously in the waiting room. I put on a smile and approached my daughter. "Emma, let's go home." After leaving the hospital, we stopped by a nearby Zatsa coffee. I ordered a hot chocolate for Emma and coffee for myself. While Emma was playing in the kids' corner inside the store, I tried to organize my thoughts. Gazing at the people passing by outside the window, the events of the past few years flashed through my mind like a film reel. The happy days, and the recent painful times. My hand holding the coffee cup trembled slightly. "Mama, it was delicious," Emma's voice brought me back to reality. "I'm glad you enjoyed it," I smiled, but inside, my heart was in turmoil. On the way home, holding Emma's small hand tightly, I had made up my mind. What should I do now? What could I do to protect Emma? The answer was clear, but I needed a little more time to make that decision. Arriving home, I sat on the living room sofa and had Emma sit on my lap. "Emma, Mama loves you very much. No matter what happens, Mama will protect you, okay?" Emma nodded silently and hugged me tightly. That night, after putting Emma to bed, I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. The moonlight shining through the window illuminated my wedding ring placed on the table. Staring at that light, I was summoning courage for tomorrow. Several days passed since my decision at Zatsa Coffee. Every night, after Emma had fallen asleep, I sat in front of the living room computer, researching Texas divorce laws. The pale light from the screen cut through the quiet darkness of the night. While struggling with complex legal terms, I kept pushing forward, thinking of Emma's smile. Best interests of the child, property division, child support. Occasionally, I felt dizzy from the unfamiliar string of words. One day, when I consulted with Linda, a friend from the moms group, at a coffee shop, she introduced me to a trustworthy private investigator. Watching the latte foam slowly disappear, Linda quietly said, "Sarah, if you have evidence, you can protect your and Emma's future. But are you sure this is what you want?" I exhaled deeply and firmed my resolve. Yes, for Emma's sake too, I need to clarify things. Encouraged by Linda's words, I decided to hire the investigator. For the next 2 weeks, my heart was constantly swinging between anxiety and expectation. Even when sending Emma off to school in the morning or putting her to bed at night, a part of my mind was always concerned about Mike. Although Emma's rash had improved slightly, her night crying continued. In the middle of the night, hearing Emma's sobbing from her room, my heart felt like it was being torn apart. Hugging Emma during these times, I questioned my decision over and over again. "Mama, when is Papa coming home?" At Emma's innocent question, I was at a loss for words. I didn't want to lie. But I couldn't tell the truth either. "Papa is busy. But he's always thinking of you, Emma." My own words sounded somewhat hollow to me. Finally, I received a call from the investigator. I was shopping at the time and stopped in the vegetable aisle of the supermarket. "Mrs. Johnson, we've captured decisive evidence." At those words, my heart started racing. I almost dropped the tomato I was holding. The next day, my hand trembled as I opened the envelope from the investigator. Sitting on the living room sofa, I took several deep breaths. What came out of the envelope was a photo of Mike entering the luxury hotel, Driscoll, with a young woman. I gasped. The woman in Mike's arms looked more than 10 years younger than me. Her vibrant smile and Mike's intimate gestures. These images burned into my eyes and wouldn't leave. Hot tears flowed from my eyes as I stared at the photos. My chest felt like it was about to burst with sadness and anger. My wedding ring suddenly felt heavy on the ring finger of my left hand. But I had to stay calm for Emma's sake. I took deep breaths repeatedly, suppressing my emotions. Outside the window, everyday life continued as usual. The neighbor's dog was barking in their yard, and children were riding bicycles on the street. This ordinary scene looked a bit distorted to me now. That night, I left Emma with my friend Jessica. At the doorstep, Emma looked up at me anxiously. "Mama, where are you going?" I knelt down, lowering my body to Emma's eye level. "It's okay. Mama just has some important business. I'll come pick you up soon, okay?" I kissed Emma's cheek and thanked Jessica. As I got into the car and looked in the rearview mirror, I could see Emma waving her little hand. Returning home, silence enveloped me. Only the clock hands seemed to tick extraordinarily loudly, marking time. While waiting for Mike to return, I looked at the evidence photos over and over again. On the coffee table was our wedding photo. Mike and I smiling happily. If only we could go back to those days. I shook my head as if to shake off such thoughts. Just after 11 p.m., I finally heard the sound of the front door opening. The sound of keys, the sound of shoes being taken off. And then, I'm home. My body stiffened for a moment at Mike's voice. But I couldn't back down now. I stood up and turned on the living room light. "Mike, we need to talk." I approached Mike, who had entered the living room, trying to appear calm. Mike seemed a bit drunk. His breath carried a faint smell of whiskey. "What's wrong? You look unusually serious," Mike said in a light tone, but seeing my expression, he became a bit tense. His eyes quickly scanned the room. It looked like he was searching for something, or trying to escape from something. I silently handed him the evidence photos. Mike was clearly shaken when he saw them. I could see the blood draining from his face. "This is just a work-related meeting. You're misunderstanding." Mike's eyes avoided mine as he made excuses. His voice was a bit higher than usual. "That's enough. Stop lying. Emma is hurting because of your actions." My voice was surprisingly calm, even to myself. Although internally my emotions were swirling like a storm, on the surface I was as cold as ice. Mike tried to continue making excuses, but I cut him off. "I've decided to divorce. I think this is best for Emma too." At those words, Mike's expression changed completely. Surprise, anger, and a bit of fear appeared on his face. "What? You can't just..." I faced the angry Mike with a resolute attitude. My heart was beating violently, but my expression remained calm. "If you want to fight this, I'll submit all this evidence to the court. I'll also demand custody of Emma." Mike was speechless for a moment. He seemed to have lost the will to resist in the face of my determination. His shoulders slumped a little. Silence dominated the room. In that quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. The sound of the clock's second hand seemed unusually loud. Outside the window, the night wind was rustling the trees. That sound seemed as unstable as our current relationship. Mike collapsed onto the sofa. His eyes showed colors of resignation and regret. I quietly removed my wedding ring and placed it on the coffee table. That small metallic sound seemed to announce the end of our 10-year marriage. "Emma is at Jessica's house tonight. I'll go pick her up tomorrow." My voice was surprisingly steady. Mike nodded silently. Before leaving the living room, I turned back. The person who was once dear to me now looked like a stranger. It was as if 10 years had vanished in an instant. "Goodbye, Mike." With those words, I took my first step towards a new life. A few days after the confrontation with Mike, I was sitting in a lawyer's office. From the window, I could see the Austin cityscape. A flock of small birds flew between the skyscrapers. Watching the birds fly freely, I took a deep breath. "Mrs. Johnson, this is the divorce petition." The lawyer's words brought me back to reality. As I looked through the documents, the past 10 years flashed through my mind like a film reel. The happy days, and the recent painful times. My hand holding the pen trembled slightly. The following week, I started looking for an apartment with Emma. In the suburbs of Austin, in a quiet residential area. When we found an apartment near a small park, Emma's eyes lit up. "Mama, I can play with friends here." At those words, my determination solidified. On moving day, Mike suddenly appeared. His eyes were red, and he looked tired. "Sarah, I'm truly sorry." Seeing Mike stumble over his words, complex emotions welled up inside me. Anger, sadness, and a bit of sympathy. "Mike, it's too late. But please remain a father to Emma." At my words, he nodded silently. A new life began. For the first few weeks, Emma's night crying continued. Will Papa never come back? Such questions often pained my heart. But hugging Emma gave me the courage to face forward. It was a month after moving that I learned about the local DV support group, Safe Place. Encouraged by my friend Linda to participate, I found women there who had similar experiences. Listening to their stories, I realized I wasn't alone. "Sarah, you're strong. You stood up for Emma's sake." At the words of Carol, the group leader, I couldn't stop my tears. Emotions I had been bottling up for years suddenly poured out. Emma's symptoms also gradually improved. With the support of Jennifer, the psychotherapist, mother and daughter spent days healing their wounds. Every time Emma's smile returned, I became more certain that I had made the right choice. The divorce was finalized 6 months after our separation. When I faced Mike in court, he looked haggard. "Sarah, I'm truly sorry. I did something unforgivable." While harboring complex feelings towards Mike's words, I responded calmly. "Mike, we can't change the past. But from now on, please be a good father to Emma." The judge granted me custody of Emma and ordered Mike to pay appropriate child support. Furthermore, Mike's infidelity was recognized, and he was ordered to pay me compensation. What was unexpected was that Mike's affair partner was also ordered to pay compensation. "Now you can start a new life," the lawyer said. I let out a sigh of relief at those words. A year passed, and I started a part-time job. Working at a local bookstore, I created a life rhythm that allowed me to participate in Emma's school events. Emma also adapted to the new environment, made friends, and regained her cheerfulness. One day, during volunteer work at Safe Place, a newly participating woman was tearfully recounting her experiences. Watching her, I realized that my experience could be a source of strength for others. In the group session, I stood up. "We have all overcome difficulties. That experience becomes the power to help others." I was scared at first too. But I was able to stand up for Emma's sake, and for my own sake. You all have that strength too. At my words, the room fell silent. Then, one by one, people started nodding. At that moment, I felt like I had found my new mission. On the way home, holding hands with Emma, I looked up at the sky. It seemed bluer and wider than before. "Mama, let's go get ice cream." I responded with a smile to Emma's innocent grin. "Sure, let's go." The door to a new life was opening wide before us. On a crisp spring day, Sunlight poured down on Austin's Zilker Park. Sarah, 37, and Emma, 10, were enjoying a picnic on the green lawn. "Mama, I'm happy," Emma suddenly murmured. Sarah gently hugged her daughter and smiled, saying, "I'm happy too, Emma." 2 years had passed, and Sarah had officially started working at New Hope, an NPO supporting DV victims. Emma had grown into a healthy and active 5th grader, regaining her bright smile. Mike was watching the two from a distance. He had stopped by the park by chance after attending Emma's sports day. After the divorce, he had gone through rehabilitation for alcohol addiction and was now engaged in community volunteer work. Seeing his ex-wife and daughter laughing happily, Mike felt regret but also relief. He quietly approached them and said, "Sarah, Emma, hello." Surprised, the two turned to face Mike, who offered them a gentle smile. "I'm really glad to see you both so happy." Sarah noticed the change in Mike and nodded slightly. Emma, though a bit confused, honestly conveyed her feelings. "Papa, I'm happy with Mama." Mike gently patted his daughter's head and murmured, "I see. That's good." The three spent a peaceful time together, despite the awkward atmosphere. As they parted, Mike vowed, "I'll keep working hard to be a good father to Emma." Sarah and Emma started walking hand in hand through the twilight park. Watching their retreating figures, a small tear glistened in Mike's eye. A new form of family bond was slowly but surely being woven.